Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Canine Cannibalism. Today, we are going to be taking a look at The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. The book is 164 pages, broken up into 11 chapters. I'll give you a quick blurb. A hedonistic man summons a group of extra-dimensional religious zealots by way of a puzzle box. What happens next will shock you. In this video, we're going to be looking at both the book and the movie that most of you have probably heard of, based off of the book or novella, Hellraiser, which is also written by Clive Barker and I believe directed by him as well. We're going to be doing a myriad of things. I'm going to be giving you a content sample, which is just a very robust trigger warning, what you can think of it as. It's a little bit more of a novelty thing than that, but that's kind of what it is. I'll be giving you a pre-summary review. I will be giving you a series of ratings for the book. I will be giving you a summary of the book and a little bit of conversation about differences in the movie versus the book. And then we will have a very, very long post-summary discussion about what I did and didn't like in the book and the movie. And yeah, that'll be it. So, without further ado, we're going to jump right into our content sample. If you were to pick up a copy of The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, you would find all of the following. You have your standard gore, torture, mutilation, and death. And in this book, that does include cannibalism. And that's it. A very, very, very short content sample. Probably one of the shortest I've ever done, but that's really all there is to tell in this book. There's some sex, some sexy scenes, some not so sexy scenes involving sex, but, you know, it's mostly just gore and shit. Not actual shit. Not this one. So we're going to jump into a quick little pre-summary review. Now, this book is talked up a lot, and it's really not great. Like, I wasn't super impressed at all. There were a lot of things that made me a little bit iffy on if I liked it or not. And this book is very much going to be a this versus the movie, so if you're not here for that, leave now. But you would think that this is like a prototype for the movie, since he wrote and directed the movie. That this would be like his little fucking prototype to go off of, and then he could make the movie into his final vision. And maybe he did. But there are a lot of issues with both that don't overlap. Like, this has issues that the movie doesn't, and the movie has issues that the book doesn't, and I don't really like one or the other better. It's just they're kind of both meh. I remembered Hellraiser being a lot better than it actually was, and I rewatched it, and it's just not the best, if I'm honest. Like, revolutionary for the time, special effects, everything, but it's just not great. As I said, very short pre-summary review. We're going to jump into ratings now. If you're unfamiliar with my rating system, I take certain aspects of a given book and rate them on a scale from 0 to 10. These first numbers are rated on a scale from 0 to 10, where 5 is completely mid, completely mediocre, not bad, not good. 0 is bad, 10 is good. You get the gist. In The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, your plot and plot direction rating is going to be a 5 out of 10. I really, really, really enjoyed the plot at the beginning. Really did. Can't really say much without spoilers, but it's very in-depth stuff about rituals and summoning and the relationship between the hedonistic man and his lover, and it's very good. And then we move into following the girl who's crushing on... He's not even the main character. The girl who's crushing on the hedonistic man's brother. And we follow her, and it's just not great, like, at all. Like, really not at all. So it's a 5. It kind of all evens out without the really, really off scenes with the friends. It would have been much higher, but it was so just bland, really is the best way to put it. Just bland. Tone is also going to be a 5. Again, a lot of the tone in the suspenseful scenes was very decent. Very good. It wasn't like jumping out of the page at me or anything. It wasn't making me feel suspense. It wasn't getting my heart rate increased or anything. But it was decent. It was decently written. And then it was just bland for the rest of it. There was just a lot of blandness. And honestly, thinking about it now, I'm actually going to bump that up to a 6, so that's a 6. But it's overall, there was a lot of blandness, but there was some suspense. There are a couple of scenes where the lover is almost forcing herself to have sex with her husband so that he doesn't find out what's happening with the hedonistic man and all the stuff. And it's done pretty well, so I'll actually bump that up to a 6. Characters and character development, it's going to be a 3. There are 2 characters that are decently developed, one more than the other because we follow her a lot, the lover, and then the friend is just underdeveloped and kind of flat. The husband is very, very flat, and then the hedonistic man also could have been developed a little better, if I'm honest. And the Cenobites aren't developed at all, but I really don't think they need to be. And it's just kind of, yeah, it's just kind of. Grammar and typos is going to be a 6. There is a recurring motif throughout, which is the usage of Latin phrases. Now, I don't know if that's just how Barker writes. That may just be how he writes. But for the type of book this is, dealing with extra-dimensional, almost demonic-like creatures, including a lot of Latin phrases, I feel that it adds a lot to things like the tone, the prose. So I rated this a 6. There weren't any typos. There weren't any weird usages of grammar. And the inclusion of things like that really did bump it up a notch. Dialogue's going to be a 5. Wasn't bad, wasn't good. I didn't notice any cringy aspects, any dialogue that didn't sound like it actually was coming from a human, and then there wasn't anything incredible. Prose is going to be an 8. The prose was absolutely fucking magnificent throughout. I have 0 complaints, only good things to say about it. It was very flowy at certain points, and it just kind of it all came together to really just help the story along, in my opinion. I think it was done very, very well. I think the word choice and the structure of the sentences was done very, very well. Lots of McCarthy-esque listing of things, like description, comma, description and noun, comma, description and noun, that kind of thing. It was very flowy. I think it was done very, very well. Personal enjoyment, I'm going to say this was a 6. I was very, very enthralled by the beginning through the middle, and then with the ending and the friend, I just kind of, my interest petered out, which is kind of the story of this book. A lot of things just peter out, but it wasn't bad. By no means was it bad. I enjoyed it a decent bit, so do with that information what you will. These next 2 ratings are your disturbing factor and your gross out factor. They are rated on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being not disturbing, not gross, 10 being the most disturbing, the most gross. For the Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, your disturbing factor is a 2. Wasn't very disturbing comparatively to the other things that I reviewed, but there were a few disturbing scenes. People getting ripped apart, lots of gore, torture, that kind of stuff. Decently disturbing. In relation to something like Stephen King, this would be upper echelon of his most disturbing books. Not as disturbing as something like Under the Dome, but approaching it. So, very, very violent, very splatter-esque at certain scenes. I believe this is considered traditional splatterpunk, going against the grain, that kind of stuff. Gross out factor is going to be a 0. There was one slightly gross scene with a rotting woman with heads, and then it's implied that she has sex with the hedonistic man. And that's really it. There was a jar of piss at one point, but that wasn't really touched on or anything. It was just a jar of piss. So nothing really gross at all. So it's a 0. And yeah, that's going to be it for your ratings. We are now going to jump into a plot summary. This is your chance to leave if you don't want things spoiled for you. This is a plot summary, so I will be spoiling to you the major plot points. There is a hedonistic man named Frank, and he retires to the house that he co-owns with his brother. Once there, he summons a group of horrifically mutilated extra-dimensional religious zealots by way of a puzzle box. They are known as the Cenobites, part of the Order of the Gash. They promise extreme pleasures unmatched by anything else. Frank gives himself over to them and quickly realizes that it is a mistake. To the Cenobites, pain is pleasure and pleasure is pain, and vice versa, vice versa. Or vice versa, vice versa. I never remember which is the correct pronunciation and which is the one that people say is the correct pronunciation but actually isn't. They bring him to the brinks of sensual pleasure never before imagined, before pulling him apart and putting him back together again. He is a prisoner, reduced to a shell of humanity, and like it or not, he is at their mercy. Frank's brother, Rory, moves into the house with his wife, Julia. While redecorating, Rory cuts himself and bleeds on the floor of the room where the ritual took place. The blood mixes with Frank's semen left on the floor just before he was taken, and gives Frank the power to break through they call it the schism, the door between the worlds. He appears momentarily to Julia, telling her that he needs blood. Julia, who had an affair with Frank right before her wedding, is still infatuated with him and does not truly love Rory. She decides to help him. She lures numerous men to the house under the guise and promise of sex before murdering them in Frank's room. Frank manages to break free and quickly regrows his flesh and organs with every drop of blood that he consumes. Rory, noticing that Julia has been acting strange, enlists the help of his friend Kirsty. Kirsty has always had a crush on Rory, but knows that she cannot compete with Julia. And that's never going to be brought up again, because it's never brought up again in the book, really. Nothing ever happens with that. Kirsty sneaks into the house after watching Julia bring in a man. She then watches as the man is attacked and devoured by Frank. She manages to escape Frank by finding the puzzle box and throwing it out the window, distracting him. She collects the box and ends up in the hospital. There, she completes the puzzle, not knowing the consequences. A Cenobite appears and explains that it must take someone now that they have been summoned, the Cenobites. Kirsty pleads, telling the Cenobite that Frank has escaped them, that she will lead them to him and that they can take him instead. The Cenobite agrees on the condition that Frank is delivered alive and that he confesses who he is. Kirsty goes back to the house only to find Rory there and Frank dead. Rory explains that he fought his brother and won. As Kirsty prepares to be taken, she realizes that something is wrong with Rory. She scratches his face and realizes that it is Frank wearing his skin. Frank chases her through the house, killing Julia and sucking her dry in the process. Kirsty eventually tricks him into revealing his name, and he is taken by the Cenobites. Kirsty escapes the house and twice runs into a member of the Order of the Gash known as the Engineer, and he is seemingly a man made of light and fire. The Engineer hands her the puzzle box as she walks away from the house. She realizes that she is meant to hold on to it until the next person needs it, and the book ends. She imagines reuniting with Rory in heaven. Differences between the book and the movie, some notable ones. Rory is named Larry in the movie. Kirsty is Larry's daughter in the movie, not his friend who has a crush on him. The Cenobites, as they are presented in the movie, are much more demonic in nature, and they seem to take personal pleasure and excitement in the taking and torture of people, as opposed to in the book where they kind of treat it like a reward. Like, you want this? Do you want this? Are you sure? Because we're going to give you pleasure beyond your wildest imagination. And then they mold extreme pleasure and extreme pain into one being to the point where human minds can't take it. In the movie, they try to take Kirsty as well as Frank, disregarding their deal that was made in the hospital, but she manages to return them to their dimension by resolving the box to its original state. Resolving the box to its original state, excuse me. In the movie, as opposed to being a man made of light and fire, the Engineer is depicted as a large lumbering monster that twice chases Kirsty. And at the end of the movie, Kirsty throws the puzzle box into a fire, at which point a vagrant who had been stalking her the entire movie walks up to it, reaches his hand in and grabs it, turns into a demonic flying skeleton dragon thing, and flies away. The box is then seen in the hands of the merchant who sold the box to Frank at the beginning of the movie. And those are really all of the notable differences. There are a couple of other ones. The depiction of the box is much different than how it's described in the book, but that really is not notable whatsoever. Post-summary discussion. Let's talk about this. Let's start off by giving you a quick little review of some things of the movie, right? The practical effects portrayed in the movie are absolutely incredible throughout. The scene in the movie where Frank returns from beyond the schism, or schism, whatever, is immaculately done. If I remember correctly, they put a dummy in and then melted it and then played the footage in reverse. It's very, very cool. The practical effects with the guy wearing the skin is it's done very, very well. But the acting is generally very good. And I say generally because there is one scene, notably, that is very poor in regards to its acting, and it is the hospital scene. The doctor and Kirsty and all of them, I guess, were just having an off day, but it's very, like, janky and jarring and, like, baby's first student film project. So, yeah. One thing that we'll touch on first that the movie did better than the book. In the book, the dialogue that the Cenobites speak in is a little banal. It's not great. It doesn't seem fit for a demonic extra-dimensional entity. It seems too human. So, for example, one of the Cenobites in the hospital with Kirsty says something along the lines of "leave them to their patchwork." Like it does not seem befitting of a demon, what is essentially a demon, to say things like elbow you, or like that kind of thing. It feels in that vein, and that's not necessarily the only instance, but their dialogue feels very, very human. Whereas in the movie,
we'll tear your soul apart.
Jumping back to the book again, the beginning and middle of the book are excellent, but when we reach Kirsty, it sort of peters out. However, and then in the movie, conversely, the plot seems to be in a rush to get past Frank and Julia's subplot, which was the major part of the book. Like the most of the book, I would say, was involving Frank and Julia's plot. And the movie seems to be in an extreme rush to get past that, especially even the first chapter of this book is Frank and his ritual, and that is a 10-second part of the movie. Frank opens the box and he gets ripped apart by chains, and that's that whole situation. Whereas it's a whole ritual in the book, and it's done very well. It feels very intimate. I really do enjoy the movie's decision to have Kirsty be the daughter of Rory/Larry. In the book, having her as the friend with the crush, which again, nothing gets done with development-wise, it just seems so much more impersonal than having her be his daughter. And then her reaction when she finds out that her dad is dead and Frank is wearing his skin, it's much more violent, as you would imagine. I just think that level of personality, personalism, whatever the fuck, the closeness of the characters, it does wonders for the plot. I like how the book focuses more on Julie and Frank, as well as Frank's ritual to open the box and his subsequent imprisonment. And the movie feels very impersonal in this regard. So both of you can kind of see a pattern here. The book and the movie both feel impersonal in different regards, and they seem to fix certain things in each other, but then also break certain things in each other. Anyway, the movie feels like it's attempting to go for a more traditional horror style than what the book seems to have been going for. Both depictions in the book and the movie of the engineer feel iffy and unnecessary. Having it be some random giant monster in the movie feels like an attempt, again, to lean more into traditional horror movie slasher film type shit for no reason whatsoever. And the scenes in the book with the engineer feel so random and really flesh out my distaste for its ending. So Kirsty goes into the kitchen and she sees, I guess it's Julia's body dressed up in her bridal gear from her wedding, and then she realizes that Julia's head is speaking to her from the lap, and then she goes to touch the veil of the dress or whatever, and then a light shines out and speaks to her and says that it's the engineer, and then she runs away. And then outside she bumps into a person and she realizes that it's the engineer, and it's a guy made of fire, and he passes her the box, and it just is like really random and useless and just didn't need to be touched on at all. I feel like both of the medium, the movie and the book, could have benefited from leaving the engineer as a spoken, inferred thing. He wasn't really even spoken about in the movie at all, but specifically in the book, he's mentioned twice in 2 scenes, and you can kind of infer what his role is in the Order of the Gash. And I think it would have just been better to leave it at that. But apparently we needed the 2 scenes with him appearing. All in all, I really don't know whether I like the ending of the book or the movie better, and that's not a good thing. The movie has the really, really weird giant skeleton scene, and then the cyclical nature, which I don't mind the cyclical nature of the box. That's kind of inherent in the box. Somebody holds onto it and then gives it to someone who opens it, and then it's returned to someone else. In the movie, it's the same person, the same merchant, it appears at least. And then in the book, it's, I don't know, Kirsty is given it. And then in the book, the weird engineer scene and the passing of the box to Kirsty is a little strange. And as I was just doing this in response to that, I mean, it doesn't really make sense why she's given the box. I guess it doesn't really have to make sense, but it's just a little odd. And then in conjunction with the fucking weird ass engineer scene, I don't know, it's just a little off. Neither really feel great. I mean, all in all, it's kind of like this. both the book and the movie feel like prototypes of something to come, something that would have been the final iteration that would have improved upon all of the mistakes. This had issues that the movie fixed, and the movie created its own new issues, and they both had some of the same issues. The engineer, namely, I think that was just a poor decision overall in the way that was presented in book and in movie. But it doesn't feel like the book is the prototype for the movie. It feels like the book and the movie are the prototype for something else, something that never came. We're not going to even speak about the remake of the movie, Hellraiser, which I believe released in 2022. And it's not for the reasons that some of you are probably thinking. I actually have no issue with the recasting. In the book, the Cenobites are androgynous. They are gender ambiguous except for one of them. And recasting the way that they did, I think, makes perfect sense given the story. And I think whatever her name was did an excellent job as Pinhead. But that movie sucked dog shit aside from that. So it wasn't that. It just kind of feels like they're both in this gray area of maybe they could have both been better. Maybe something could have come along to improve on both of them. And it just never did. And then we got 7 or 8 Hellraiser films that were all fucking miserably awful past the, I want to say the third one. I don't remember liking the third one very much. The second one was okay. And then they were just all bad. Inferno, Dead Seeker, or whatever the fuck it's called. Hellworld. I don't fucking remember. Judgment Day. Judgment Day had a really cool scene in the beginning, and it felt like it could have been a completely different movie, and then they just kind of threw Hellraiser in there because they were going to lose the rights to it or something. Or not Judgment Day, it's called Judgment or something, and I think that's the one that was done decently well. With the fucking guy who eats the paper or whatever. I might be mixing it up. It's been years since I've seen these movies. Yeah, that's really about it for this video. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe. I read all of my comments. I drop a heart, drop a reply, yada, yada, yada. Please read the book. Go read the book. I'll leave a link in the description to where you can go and buy the book. Always good to go and form your own opinions. Speaking of opinions, mine are my opinions and my opinions alone. Do not take my word as gospel. Go and form your own opinions. That is an important part of being a human being in society. Form your own fucking opinions about this shit. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.